Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. Andrew DiCecco has a couple of new stories up over there on the Eagles OTAs. You should check out DiCecco NFL. We're continuing our look. Division previews. We did the AFC East last week. If you missed it, you can go to our YouTube channel and check that out. Also, the AFC North today, which has the defending AFC champions in it, and it's not the Ravens, and it's not the Steelers. There's a new kid on the block. The Cincinnati Bengals are your AFC North champions, and they're your AFC champions. Can they repeat? We're about to look at all four teams last year: Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Baltimore. That was your final standings. The Bengals, 10-7, captured the division. Let's bring Andrew DiCecco in as our division previews continue this week with the AFC North. What's going on, Andrew? How are you, bud?
Hey, Mike, doing all right? How about yourself?
All is well, man. Cincinnati, a surprise champion last year, but let's take a look at some of the reasons why, starting with their quarterback, Joe Burrow. I guess if you were considering where he was last year, you've got to vault him up into that top part of the NFL. How high up is he on your quarterback list?
Well, I'm not a really big believer in lists per se, but I do have him in the elite tier. And I think he's one of the upper echelon quarterbacks in football, probably a top 5 if I had to put a number on it. But, I mean, he took a monumental leap last season, really made the most out of the weapons that were there. I mean, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, arguably one of the probably the strongest trio of receivers you're going to find in football, all around, very complete, do all different types of different things. And the running game is good as well with Joe Mixon if he's able to stay healthy. So I thought that the offensive line really needed to be the area in which they were going to revamp to keep Burrow upright and keep that offense moving forward. And I think they've done that adequately in the offseason so far.
Agree with a lot of what you just said there, and then you take a look at his weapons. This is really where this team is very interesting to watch and a lot of fun because wide receiver, Jamar Chase, now into year number 3. This guy is turning into, if not the best, one of the best wide receivers in the league. But the wide receiver position is more than just Chase.
Yeah, absolutely. I think T. Higgins is one of the most underexposed wide receivers. When I say that, I mean you don't see or hear about him very much when you see the Bengals play because they focus on Jamar Chase. He's often talked about, but T. Higgins put together a pretty nice season last year, and it's a good red zone weapon, offers some size, and I really do think that this year both of those guys, if you're looking at it from a fantasy football perspective, they're going to be top receivers on your team and produce in that way because now you're going to have Burrow that's likely going to be upright for the season. If he's able to do that, you're looking at two 1,000-yard receivers right there. And I think Higgins offers more from a touchdown standpoint.
Yeah, they got Higgins, they got Boyd, they've got a really good receiving. Hayden Hurst is their tight end. They've got some weapons, but Joe Mixon has really kind of entered himself as a kind of an all-around back all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, he was somebody that I really liked coming out of the draft, coming out of Oklahoma. I thought that he was billed as being this big back that's going to bowl through the interior of the line and run guys over. Yeah, he can do that, Mike, but what he's also good at, he also has the fluidity and the explosiveness to bounce it outside and cut up and cut up the sideline for a big gain. So I think he's a very well-rounded running back, has the wiggle that you need, but he also has the power to be a complete 3-down running back.
Yeah, they've got Mixon there as their guy. They've got Chase. They've got Higgins, Boyd. That's a really good offense. You mentioned their offensive line. That was one huge question mark. Did they upgrade in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, you have La'el Collins. You have Alex Capa. You have Jackson Carman, who they drafted in the 2021 draft in the second round. They invested in him. He's their left guard. And then you also have Jonah Williams, who was their first-round pick in 2019. I think overall you're seeing a much more formidable offensive line, better equipped to protect their franchise quarterback, which last season the Jamar Chase pick was sort of met with some scrutiny because you had Joe Burrow coming off a significant injury, and you said, how could you keep adding to the offense when when you're not really protecting your franchise. Well, I think that they've fortified that, and amazingly enough, Burrow found a way to make up for the lackluster play of offensive line around him. And I think right now they're pretty happy with that pick of getting Jamar Chase.
Yeah, let's look at their defense, which I don't think gets as much attention as their offense, but they've got some interesting names on that side of the ball. And obviously their secondary is kind of one spot that a lot of people look at. You've got Bates at safety. Obviously, you got Eli Apple last year in the Super Bowl. I mean, in the playoff run. So they're a little spotty in that spot there. Let's take a look at their safety overall, their secondary overall for Cincinnati.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Eli Apple. They also have Chidobe Awuzie there as well. Their safety tandem's fantastic in Von Bell and Jesse Bates. But I really like what they did through the draft and adding a guy in Dax Hill who can play the nickel, he can play safety, he can even play outside corner. He has the length and the fluidity and the change of direction and able to do so. He can play all of those positions at a high level. So they added him there. Tyson Anderson was a safety who I like. They got him in the 5th round in April. And Cam Taylor-Britt was a player that surprisingly went in the 2nd round this year. He's a corner, but he can also play some safety and give them some different looks there. So they've added a lot of youth there to complement what they already have, particularly in Von Bell and Jesse Bates. So I really like what they've done. They saw that as a problem area. That's really what separated the Rams and the Bengals in the Super Bowl. And I think that they've really found a way to rectify it and make sure that it's not that won't be the problem area again.
Yeah, good points. All right, let's look at the defensive front for them. And, they don't have it seemingly, or maybe they do, have that standout rush guy. Is that a spot that they were able to fix in the offseason?
Well, I don't necessarily think so. I think it's more of a collaborative effort based on what they have. They have a lot of capable guys. I don't know that they have a ton of guys that are gonna threaten for double-digit sacks or anything like that. But Sam Hubbard is a very solid player. Trey Hendrickson, of course, who's formerly with the Saints, is another strong player. They're going to complement each other on each side and be bookends. I like their defensive tackle tandem in B.J. Hill and who's his name's escaping me. DJ Reader. I think he's another underrated player. Yeah. So and I think their linebacking core has a lot of young talent there. And Logan Wilson, Akeem Davis-Gaither, Jermaine Pratt. There's a lot of young, youthful upside there that I think that they should be really. If you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan, you have to be really intrigued with how that defense is really coming together. The big area of weakness was the secondary. I think that they've rectified that in the offseason.
That's the Cincinnati Bengals, your defending AFC champions. They are the AFC North champions. Let's go to Pittsburgh, 9-7-1. But the big conversation here as this AFC North preview, probably the biggest, maybe not the biggest story in the North, we'll get to that in a minute, is the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh. Pickett, Trubisky. They do have Mason Rudolph, who they drafted a few years ago. How do you see this quarterback thing shaking out in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Trubisky, I don't know that I think he's just a temporary placeholder. I do think that he'll go into the season as the starter for the Steelers. Now, do I think that he offers long-term upside at the position? No, I don't. That's why they invested in Kenny Pickett. So I think that he's really going to be someone that sort of starts off and then eventually hands the baton off to Kenny Pickett if and when he's ready to go this season and really start to develop him and then really be viable contenders next season. Because I think he's going to have to work through some growing pains this year. But that's sort of how I envision it shaking out initially.
Obviously, though Ben Roethlisberger, you have the change in that spot. We just, you look at that quarterback spot. But what are the quarterback working with here? Well, that's a little more positive here. You got George Pickens, who they drafted. Claypool is a guy they brought into the draft 2 years ago. Deontay Johnson. So they do the new quarterback has some weapons to work with here.
Yeah, and don't forget George Pickens, who they took in the 2nd round this year, complements the Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson. I also like what they did in the 4th round by adding Calvin Austin III, that really fast receiver. He's undersized from Memphis, explosive type of player. It offers a different dimension than what they already have from anyone there. They also have Miles Boykin, who I think could a change of scenery. Of course, he was with the Ravens. I think a change of scenery might be able to help him. A little bit more of a bigger body guy in the mold of a Chase Claypool could really factor into the red zone. So they have a multitude of weapons that can really affect all different types of levels of the field. And, so the quarterback is going to be immensely aided by good surrounding talent.
We're talking with Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, our AFC North previews, looking at the Steelers. Najee Harris, we just talked about Mixon. I think Harris is really working his way into a much more diverse back as well.
Yeah, I'm a huge Najee Harris fan. It's one of those things where last season I had very high hopes for him. He didn't really average a ton of yards per carry. Didn't really become a factor, I should say, until late in the season. He was a volume guy. The offense really ran through him, which is a lot to ask of a rookie, but they didn't have the offensive line in front of him, I should say, to allow him and propel him to get these big gains. So I think that there's a lot of inefficiency there at quarterback and a streaky play there, and they leaned on their rookie running back to make things happen. Used him a lot as a receiver, by the way, and nothing really materialized. But this season, I think you're going to see a player who's going to clear that 1,000-yard mark, and I think that you're going to see a more well-balanced offense given the pieces around it and the difference in quarterback play now. And Najee Harris is a player that I think is going to be become one of the more prominent running backs in the NFL in a big way.
Yeah, that's the Pittsburgh offensive side. Defense, I mean, you got Watt, you got Hayward, Bush. Miles Jack is a name that has been around for a while, obviously. So up front with the pass rushers, the line, and the linebackers, this is a pretty solid Pittsburgh team.
Yeah, I also like what they did by adding DeMarvin Leal in the third round this year to add a little bit more youth and versatility on the defensive line. You mentioned T.J. Watt, Devin Bush. Miles Jack is a player who, he's sort of been of a mixed bag, but he's a name there. And, he has played at a high level at various points of his career. Hasn't necessarily been consistent enough. Alex Highsmith is a player that I've really liked. I've liked him since his years in college, and he really impressed me at the Shrine Bowl. I think that he's really settling into that role. Sort of reminds me of a Lamar Woodley type of player with his pass rush upside, and just continues to get better. So they found good value there in him. I believe he went one pick in front of Davion Taylor, by the way. Looking at Minka Fitzpatrick, Terrell Evans is a player who the Steelers drafted pretty high, and I believe it was 2018. I think it was even the first round, but he never really became one of those top-tier safeties that you would put in that category as being a difference maker. But nevertheless, he's still there. And Cam Sutton and Ahkello Witherspoon round out that secondary. So they're okay. It's a little bit of a middling secondary, but I really like what the first and second levels particularly. I think they're going to have much success getting to the quarterback.
All right, 9-7 last year, 9-7-1, for Pittsburgh. Now you've got Cleveland 8-9. We talked about one of the biggest stories, the Pittsburgh quarterback situation. I guess when breaking down Cleveland, this one's a disaster for what's going on in Cleveland right now. Deshaun Watson, Brissett's there, Dobbs, and then Baker Mayfield is just kind of lingering around. They don't seem to want him there. He doesn't want to be there. They might need him.
Yeah, and you wonder if they're able to mend the fences enough. It's kind of an awkward situation there. But as it turns out, Mike, they may end up needing Baker Mayfield, which is obviously it takes two to tango, so they couldn't necessarily get rid of him and send him off. But I think a part of me can't help but wonder if he was a contingency plan in case something didn't necessarily work out or there was some sort of the Watson thing had any sort of complications or anything that clouded his availability, which obviously it certainly does. So that said, I don't know how that quarterback position is going to shake out and who's going to rise to the top and be the week one starter, I should say. For me, it wouldn't surprise me to see somebody like a Jacoby Brissett come out of nowhere and be that guy just based on how things may end up shaking out.
Much like Pittsburgh, if Brissett gets this job, he's a guy who has some weapons to work with. Amari Cooper ends up there. They went out. They've got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They got those two guys there. So this is a team that does have some weapons for whoever the quarterback is.
Yeah, Nick Chubb's probably my favorite running back in football. Just, power, finesse. It's just a great blend of the two, and I think his contact balance is outstanding. Good nose for the end zone, catches the ball well. I think that he should be used more as a receiver. I think he offers a little bit more than what they've been, relying on him for. Amari Cooper's there. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a big possession type of receiver, big body guy. Can help any quarterback in the red zone and be a welcome option there. David Bell is a receiver who from Purdue, who didn't run particularly well and sort of got lost in the shuffle this offseason and through the draft process. Good value selection in the third round, and he's more of an inside receiver, but someone who can be a security blanket, which is very important when you're looking at potentially an inexperienced quarterback that's going to have to find his way and find some familiarity and get the offense rolling and keep the chains moving. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this offense is able to run moving forward, because they certainly have enough pieces there to be competent at least.
Yeah, and then on defense, I mean, they got some names on that side. Garrett, of course, maybe one of the most talented guys in the entire league. Owosu Koromoa is awesome at linebacker there. Ward at corner. This is a team that's got good talent on all three levels.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that secondary. You got Ward, John Johnson III is a player who I really like. Going back to his days with the Rams, I thought he was someone that was overlooked a little bit there. Martin Emerson, somebody that they drafted in the third round, I thought that he might have been a good candidate to end up with the Eagles as a young corner. As it stands, he's probably going to be starting opposite Greg Newsome. Greg Newsome was the first-round pick in 2021, so they have a lot of youth. I should say Greg Newsome and obviously Denzel Ward. So I think you have a young trio of corners there that are probably, in the next year or so could be in the conversation of being the strongest group, group of three in football as it stands, if they're able to take the next step in their development. But you talk about JOK, Owosu Koromoa, and he's certainly a player that I think is going to take a big leap forward this season, even more so. And of course, he was a great value second-round pick in 2021. And you talk about Myles Garrett and Jordan Elliott. Jordan Elliott was someone who I also liked a lot in the 2020 draft, who I believe was either a second or a third round pick. So there's a lot of young building blocks there. So that would be, to me, that shapes up to be probably the strongest defense in the AFC North.
8-9 Cleveland. Let's go to Baltimore. 8-9 last year, last place. Weird to say that in the AFC North was Baltimore, last place. Now, quarterback situation, Lamar Jackson, obviously uberly talented, the contract situation, but where is he, the MVP 2 years ago, where is he now in your mind?
Yeah, I think he's still the same guy, to be honest. I think he's heard and read everything that's been said about him, and there's certainly been a lot of reasons that have warranted the press that he's gotten recently. But I think he's going to take a step forward this year and play motivated and I think last year to me really seems like it was an outlier. That wasn't a Ravens type of season, and I think you're going to see them become again one of the top tier teams in football this year. And you look at the weapons that he has. Obviously, Hollywood Brown's no longer there, but Rashad Bateman's a player that I really like, and I think that you saw what he was able to do late last season. He got a late start to his rookie year, and I think that he's going to take a big step forward. James Prochet is a solid slot receiver. I like their offensive line. Ronnie Stanley and Linderbaum, who they took in the first round this year, and Morgan Moses is there as well. So they have some pieces there to work with. Mark Andrews is a player that has really become Lamar Jackson's security blanket and safety valve. So I would expect to see a lot of a continued connection between those two. And he's going to continue to be a viable red zone option for them. J.K. Dobbins, it's a shame that he got injured last year, because I was really looking forward to seeing what he was able to do. Really like him and his skill set, and he's a player that I would look forward to see a nice rebound this year, because that's a run-dominant offense, of course.
I was going to say, you wonder if they did enough to replace Hollywood Brown. They already lacked in the receiving, with Bateman, Duvernay. I mean, do they have enough talent at wide receiver? Did they really do a good enough job replacing Brown?
No, and the thing is like they have enough. Like Duvernay is a good 4, and Prochet is a good 3, but they don't have another strong, bona fide complement to Rashad Bateman, which leads me to believe that you're going to see a very heavy running game leaning on J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and Lamar Jackson, right? I think that's really, you're going to see them revert back to that DNA that they've been so prominently known for in recent years, and that's really going to have to be their calling card if they expect to really emerge in the AFC North, because it's a very it's going to be a highly contested division this year. A lot of teams have made vast improvements, and if the Ravens want to continue to keep pace, they're going to have to really make some noise on the ground again.
Well, when we think of the Ravens, we think of the running game and their defense. Where are they defensively? Obviously, the injuries, they struggled on that side of the ball last year.
Yeah, I mean, they're a little older on the defensive line. Calais Campbell's there. Michael Pierce comes over from the Vikings. He was previously with the Ravens at one point. Very big space-eating tackle. Derek Wolfe is there. He's a veteran that's played a lot of football between the Broncos and his time with the Ravens as well. But they did add Travis Jones, the defensive tackle from UConn, who was surprisingly available in the third round this year. Really good. And Justin Matabuki, who I like quite a bit. I believe he went to Texas A&M, if I'm not mistaken. So they have a pair of young linemen there. David Ojabo is a player who they selected who's probably, in all likelihood, is going to have to redshirt this year, but it's the Ravens. They have the luxury. That was a typical Ravens pick. They have the luxury of allowing him to take that redshirt season, and he's going to be a force when he's able to come back. But they have some, Patrick Queen and Tyus Bowser and Jalen Ferguson and Marcus Peters. Chuck Clark's there. Chuck Clark, by the way, could end up being dealt. We don't know really what's going to happen there. But, because they got Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams and Marlon Humphrey. So that they have I really like what they've done with what they have there to work with in the secondary.
It should be interesting. Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Baltimore. They all won 8 games or more. Cincinnati's your defending champion. Andrew DiCecco, how do you rank the AFC North entering this year?
Well, I mean, the Bengals have fortified an area that somehow kept them, a weak area. But they were able to overcome it. But now the offensive line is, it's all but rectified. So I'm going to go ahead and put the Bengals at 1 because I really do think that Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow connection moves the needle that much. So they're 1. Ravens, I think, are going to rebound. They're going to be 2 for me. And then, man, I'm gonna have to say the Browns because I really like their defense, but I don't know offensively how that's gonna even materialize or what's gonna happen there. And then 4th, I'm gonna have to go Pittsburgh because the ineptitude at the quarterback spot. You potentially could be throwing a rookie in there late in the season if things start to spiral out of control with Trubisky. So that's the way that I'm leaning right now.
All right, Pittsburgh. Who would have thought it? Last place in the AFC North, a new era of football where the Bengals are on top and the Steelers are at the bottom. That's a look at the AFC North. Andrew DiCecco, our division previews will continue next week. We'll go AFC South and then the AFC West, which many people think could be the best division in all of football. We'll break them all down for you here during football at 4. At A DiCecco NFL, and check out his work over at InsideTheBirds.com. Andrew, take care, bud.
Yeah, man, you too.
All right, great breakdowns, man. He has such great recollection of the signings and the draft choices and where guys are and the movement, even on that second and third tier. Good breakdowns on these divisions. Always enjoy these division previews to kind of get football at the tip of your tongue.